Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I am your host, Tiffany Daniels. And due to certain circumstances involving a certain online platform whose initials are YT, I'm afraid the gloves have to come off. I'm in a bit of a mood today. So, as usual, when I'm in a bit of a mood, I go into research mode and I pull up all the facts to expose these billion-dollar non-for-profits who make money off of disabled people and support and actually advertise and promote places like the JRC. So, we have two articles to go through today. And we are going to start with Emma's Shop ebook, and we are taking a look at an article done back on November 13th, 2013. What is wrong with Autism Speaks? This is going to be a bit of a long video, but it's an important video, so please be patient while we go ahead and read through this first article. What is wrong with Autism Speaks? When my daughter was diagnosed, we heard about Autism Speaks. Their message supported everything else we were reading and hearing about autism, so I didn't spend much time thinking about what they were saying, or who they were involved with, or even what they were doing with all the money they received. In fact, we gave money to them during those early years. When friends and families asked who they could donate money to, I encouraged them to give to Autism Speaks. We're going to have some quotes from ASAN here, folks. Autism Speaks has a long and continued pattern of exclusion of autistic voices from its work on autism. As an organization without a single autistic person on its board of directors, Autism Speaks is the last group our nation's leaders should be entrusting with the creation of a national plan to address autism. No reasonable person would dare suggest that an organization comprised entirely of men represents women's interests, or that an organization led entirely by white people represents the interests of people of color. Yet the same standard evidently does not apply to disability organizations, despite the existence of many cross-disability and autism-specific organizations led by actually disabled people. Like People First, ASAN, Art Society, Wrong Planet, there's a lot. That's Lydia Brown from Autistic Hoya. I didn't know. Only 4% of Autism Speaks budget goes towards the family service grants that are the organization's means of funding services. ASAN. We'll get into that article here in a minute. Their slogan is Autism Speaks to Washington. It is neither autism nor autistics who are doing the speaking, though. Pauline Durbin, Westby. I didn't know. Autism Speaks has aligned themselves with the Judge Rotenberg Center. Read Autistic Hoya's Unholy Alliance. We'll also get to that article as well, as you can see up here. A center that uses electric shock as an aversive. The Judge Rotenberg Center continues to accept students, despite this video footage showing a young man being tortured, which I showed you in a previous video. For more about Judge Rotenberg Center, read Autistic Hoya's post with dozens of links here. Again, we'll be going over that in a minute. Bob and Suzanne Wright, whose grandson is autistic, created Autism Speaks in 2005. Since then, Autism Speaks has become one of the most influential autism organizations in the world. What Autism Speaks does and says is often the first thing parents and people reading about autism hear. If 3 million children in America one day went missing, what would we do as a country? If 3 million children in America one morning fell gravely ill, what would we do as a country? We would call out the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. We call up every member of the National Guard. We'd use every piece of equipment ever made. We'd leave no stone unturned. Yet for the most part, have lost touch with 3 million American children, and as a nation, we've done nothing. Suzanne writes, a call to action. The problem with this kind of rhetoric is that it is not a call to action. It is a call to terror. Terror that our children are missing or have been stolen, or that if we are not careful, any of our children will be taken away from us. It furthers the misconception about autism and likens it to a predator, a kidnapper who will steal our children from our loving arms. This is not awareness, it's propaganda. It's also dehumanizing. It is taking away from autistic people our personhood, our autonomy. It's essentially saying that we died, and in our place has been put this autistic monster that must be eradicated at all costs. Yeah. This is not awareness. This is propaganda. Autism Speaks is responsible for a number of public service announcements which show screaming children and their exhausted parents who talk to the camera about how hard it is to have an autistic child. God, am I tired of the martyr. Breathe. Okay. Who talk to the camera about how hard it is to have an autistic child, while those same children are present. Yeah. We get to hear how much of a burden and a tragedy we are. Isn't that nice? I might have been one of those parents not so long ago. In fact, I allowed a camera crew to come to our home several years ago and film us. The short film showed us sitting on our couch talking about our daughter as she sat beside me, not realizing my daughter understood everything that I said. This is yet another form of my many regrets, intercut with clips I provided them with of my daughter in full meltdown. I have since asked that our interview and all clips of my daughter be removed, and I am grateful they respected my wishes. The parents in the Autism Speaks videos are not so fortunate. So many of us have supported organizations we thought were working towards positive change. We believed that they were helping us, our children, and autistic people. We thought that they had our children's best interests in mind. We believed they were doing good, only to find we were wrong. I didn't know. Now I do. Okay. Now we are going to go into this article. It's called Before You Donate to Autism Speaks, Some Things You Should Know. Isn't that quaint? Well, that's all right. I'm going to show you something very disturbing. This is the most disturbing and dehumanizing thing many of us in the community have ever seen. This came out right as, excuse me, I was really finding my footing in the advocacy disability rights movement when this came out. And I remember just the rage and being completely horrified. Okay. This is how Autism Speaks see people like me. They don't see us as people at all. It states, I am autism. I am visible in your children, but if I can help it, I'm invisible to you until it's too late. I know where you live, and guess what? I live there too. I hover around all of you. I know no color barrier, no religion, no morality, no currency. Think about this. It's essentially saying, well, I'll let you decide what that means. I know what it means to me. It's removing my personhood, my reality, my code of ethics, essentially saying I don't have any. I speak your language fluently, and with every voice I take away, I acquire yet another language. Yeah, it hasn't taken away my voice now, has it? I work very quickly. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. Think about that. Think about that. We are being compared. A neurodevelopmental disorder is being compared to fatal diseases that kill. We are literally being compared to pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. Think about how that makes us feel if we are children watching this ad. And if you're happily married, I will make sure your marriage fails, blaming us. Isn't that nice? And your money will fall into my hands, and I will bankrupt you for my own self-gain, implying we're selfish. I don't sleep, so I'll make sure you don't either. I will make it virtually impossible for your family to easily attend a temple, birthday party, or public park. Isn't freaking the shaming wonderful? Without a struggle, without embarrassment, without pain. So we are at fault for struggle. We are at fault, our very existence, for your embarrassment and for your pain. We get to listen to this every day. You have no cure for me. You scientists don't have resources, and I relish their desperation. Your neighbors are happier to pretend that I don't exist, of course, until it's their child. I am autism. I have no interest in right or wrong. This is the concept where people think that people with autism have no concept of right and wrong. It can snap and hurt people and do horrible crimes at any time. Every time there's a school shooting, I guarantee you, at some point, the word autism or autistic or Asperger's will be brought up. Just wait for it. I derive great pleasure out of your loneliness. I will fight to take away your hope. I will plot to rob you of your children and your dreams. So take a look at that. Rob you of your children and your dreams. Essentially, is trying to separate autism from the kid. Like, autism is the kidnapper. Okay? That's going to take away your real child and replace them with me. Do you have any idea or concept how insulting and degrading and dehumanizing that is? That we are the reason why your dreams are destroyed. It's all our fault. How dare we exist while being autistic and disabled? Shouldn't you do everything in your power to eradicate us? You're getting the message, right? I will make sure that every day you wake up, you will cry, wondering who will take care of my child after I die. It couldn't be you could, I don't know, put together a circle of support. It's years later and I'm still pissed. Okay. And the truth is, I am still winning, and you are scared, and you should be. I am autism. You ignored me. That was a mistake. Folks, this is fear-mongering of the highest level. This is associating us as akin to fatal diseases. In fact, it is making us worse. It's essentially saying that we, due to our disability, are the cause of all our family's problems and struggles. We're embarrassments. You see where I'm getting? It will all make sense as we go through each of these here. We won't go into their so-called rousing chorus, because it's a whole bunch of just self-congratulating pat on the back of, look what we're doing to cure people. Here's the problem with that before we get into the next article. The problem with this idea of a cure is it's going to ultimately end up one way. Suppose we do find the smoking gun, the one thing that triggers all the rest of the things that causes autism. We find the smoking gun like they did with Down syndrome many years ago. Here is what we are afraid of, and we should be. When the smoking gun for what caused Down syndrome was discovered, they tried to find a cure. But the fact of the matter is, they were unable to. So they went with another, more horrifying option. They began with prenatal testing. And when the prenatal testing started, and they do the testing, and they find out that the child in the womb has Down syndrome, here's some statistics for you. Out of all those who get the prenatal testing done for Downs, 75% of those children are aborted because they have a disability. They don't even get a chance to live. We are afraid, due to organizations like Autism Speaks, who scare money out of you, billions every year from all over the globe. Due to that fear-mongering, should the smoking gun ever be found and a comprehensive prenatal test put together, we are afraid that the same thing will happen to us. I mean, look at this. They are already saying that we're not the real child. They're already likening us to the medieval changeling. They are already basically saying we're worse than all the fatal diseases of the world. So why would they even think twice? You see where I'm getting with this. And we have a right to live. Okay? Now, we are going to go a little bit further ahead in history here. Now we got a little bit of a backdrop, and we are finding out exactly what Autism Speaks is all about. And remember, folks, only 4% of their billions and billions of dollars given every year actually goes to any family, anywhere to actually assist with services. All the rest of it, the 96%, goes toward quote-unquote non-specified research for a cure that they know and we know is never going to happen. So where's that money going? And who's it going to? Wouldn't we all like to know? Now that we've got a little bit of backdrop of why we consider Autism Speaks a hate group, we are now going to go ahead and read from Autistic Hoya. This is an article on her blog called The Unholy Alliance, Autism Speaks and Judge Rotenberg Center. Autistic and disabled activists, as well as our allies, have for years criticized Autism Speaks' long history of dehumanizing rhetoric about autistic people, irresponsible financial practices, and unconscionable claim to represent autistic people without including any autistic people in their leadership, in direct contradiction to the principles of the disabilities rights movement. I have written numerous times on the myriad of reasons why autistic people, writ large, not only decline to support Autism Speaks, but actively condemn their goals and practices. Given Autism Speaks' history of damaging PSAs that exploit autistic people and our families, as well as their continual refusal to meaningfully include autistic people throughout their leadership and decision-making process, I am rarely shocked when new information arises about their projects and programs. I was not shocked at their latest PSA, over a 20-minute-long mini-documentary ostensibly about non-speaking autistic people who type to communicate, but which in reality faced sharp criticism from high-profile non-speaking autistic Amy Sequenzia, who types herself. I was not shocked at their announcement of a policy summit in Washington, D.C. this week that will in all likelihood ignore the concerns of autistic people about education, employment, housing, healthcare, or community living. Excuse me, folks. I was not shocked, though I was deeply saddened, to read founder Suzanne Wright's message yesterday in advance of that policy summit, which once again resorted to fear-mongering language like epidemic and national health crisis to objectify autistic people as burdens on their families or tragedies for society. But I was shocked and profoundly disturbed by the revelation that Autism Speaks Walk Now for Autism in Washington, D.C., the city where I live. They chose to host and feature the Judge Rotenberg Center as one of their exhibitors as a resource fair. At a resource fair. Let me reiterate that one more time in case the prior sentence was not sufficient to jar your conscience. Autism Speaks featured the Judge Rotenberg Center as a resource for autistic people and their families. Here's a scanned image of their card. I will make sure to click for the larger image, from DC's Walked Resource Fair, including the Judge Rotenberg Center, number 15 on the list of providers. So, I'm going to click that for you. I like my receipts. And it is right here. If you see right here where my mouse is, Judge Rotenberg Center, Judge Rotenberg Educational Center. See that? Yeah. Okay, let's see if it will let me go back. For those who may not be regular readers of Autistic Hoya, let me elaborate on the history of the Judge Rotenberg Center. The JRC, formerly known as Behavioral Research Institute, was founded in 1971 by Harvard-educated psychologist Matthew Israel, who studied behavioralism under B.F. Skinner. Israel opened shop in California, taking in students with significant developmental, neurological, and behavioral disabilities with a no expulsion, no rejection policy. His methodology of treatment was predicted on techniques called aversive interventions. Pay attention to this. This is what Autism Speaks supports. SLAPs, forced inhalation of ammonia, food deprivation, sleep deprivation, prolonged restraint, deep muscle pinches intended to inflict maximum pain, and long-term seclusion. One of the more disturbing practices that Israel favors is called behavioral rehearsal lessons, in which students are coerced into producing unwanted behaviors solely for the purpose of subsequently punishing them. If that's not abuse and torture, I don't know what is. Essentially, aversive interventions operate on the same philosophy that some people apply to animals. If you pair unwanted behavior with a painful stimulus, the unwanted behavior will go away. Except in California, one of Israel's students died as a result of his treatment methods. The BRI was forced to relocate, and Israel settled in Rhode Island, where his abusive practices continued. In the early 1990s, Israel had a brilliant epiphany. What if you were to use electric shock as an aversive? Rhode Island's regulatory agency refused to permit the BRI to subject its residents to electric shock punishments, and so Israel removed the facility once again to Massachusetts, where it has reigned ever since. The BRI invented their own device, known as the Graduated Electronic Deleculator, which is intentionally designed to be more powerful and more painful than a police taser. Students are forced to wear electrodes attached to various body parts, and whenever they engage in unwanted behavior, anything from headbanging to flapping their hands to get out of their seat without permission, staff press a button that causes an electric shock. When the state of Massachusetts attempted to end this barbaric practice, Israel sued the regulating agency. When he prevailed, forcing the then Commissioner of Mental Retardation to resign, he renamed the facility after the judge who oversaw the agreement, Ernest Rotenberg. At least 6 students with disabilities have died at the JRC, either directly or indirectly because of the torture inflicted upon them in the name of treatment. The former and current UN Special Rapporteurs on Torture, Manfred Nowak and Juan E. Mendez, have condemned the JRC's practices as torture. The U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division has been investigating the JRC since around the time that footage of the JRC's shock treatment was played in open court during a civil lawsuit against the facility. The JRC is the only facility in the entire United States that uses electric shock as punishment on disabled people, a form of abuse that would readily lead to public outrage if used on convicted prisoners or animals, but that remains largely unquestioned when called treatment and used on disabled people instead. People with disabilities, family members, and community advocates have been calling for an end to the JRC's abuses for decades. I have compiled a long list of links to articles, formal reports, court documents, and videos documenting the JRC's brutal practices. We'll also be going over those court documents and everything on this channel. Of the myriad of abuses that occur in institutional settings, the JRC are certainly among the worst. And yet, Autism Speaks had the gall to include the JRC as a service provider in the resource fair at the DC Walk Now for Autism. This is the organization that is hosting a National Policy and Action Summit to develop a national plan on autism in Washington, D.C. this week. An organization that explicitly and unabashedly partnered itself with the Judge Rotenberg Center. Autism Speaks' history of excluding autistic people from leadership, up to the utter absence of any autistic people whatsoever on their board in the history of the organization's existence, ought to be troubling already. And their repeated insistence on the justifications for violence against autistic people murdered by family members or caregivers shocking to the conscience. That's filicide. This alliance between Autism Speaks and the Judge Rotenberg Center is outrageous beyond the belief. See, with filicide, Autism Speaks always sides with the parents. These people kill us, and they side with the spouse who's doing DV. They side with the abusers. Doesn't that sound familiar? But moving on. I urge policymakers and community members interested in supporting autistic people in our families to support disability rights organizations led by disabled people. It is not possible in good conscience to lend one's support to an organization that not merely siphons money away from local communities and into research that does not benefit autistic people, but actively aligns itself with a facility with a widely publicized, well-documented history of brutal abuse and torture of people with disabilities. Those of us who are autistic deserve a national plan on autism developed with us included at the table every step of the way. We deserve a national plan on autism that seeks to benefit us rather than harm us. We deserve a national plan on autism that condemns abuses such as those at the Judge Rotenberg Center rather than encourages complacency with those practices, let alone directly endorses them. We deserve a national plan on autism that moves away from the language of pity fear, and tragedy, and toward achieving equality, access, and inclusion in our communities. Autism Speaks. It is well past time for you to listen. Okay. All right. Now, one last thing before we close out of here. Now, for even more irony and another healthy dose of outrage, Autism Speaks actually issued a statement explicitly condemning the Judge Rotenberg Center about a year ago, following Andre McCollin's case against the JRC going to trial. Andre, who's autistic, was shot 31 times in 7 hours after refusing to remove his jacket. You can read the Autism Speaks statement here. Let the irony and outrage keep building. So on one hand, they're condemning it. On the other hand, there they are promoting it. Go figure, right? Go figure. So Autism Speaks is its own topic. There's just so many things to go over in how they basically treat and basically turn people with autism into demons who still their real children away, and they get replaced with us. It's a long, disturbing, dehumanizing, condescending mess, which we will delve into at another time. But this does give you a good, well-rounded look as to why we do not support them in general. Now, on top of that, we just outed their dirty little secret. Don't forget up there what I just showed you in that flyer. Who is it that they are promoting again at their Walk Now for Autism back in November the 2nd, 2013, right after they supposedly did their token condemning of the people? And yet, who are they showing as a service provider? Right there. So they say one thing and do another, which, let's face it, they also do the majority of donations. So, folks, Autism Speaks is not only complicit in the torture of the children at the Judge Rotenberg Center, they're also complicit in the torture of other children by being strong advocates of aversive therapies. Now, if you remember from that other article, they talked about what aversives were. Remember, that was slaps, food deprivation, sleep deprivation, hard pinches done to induce pain. All of it. All of it. Aversive therapies fall under that umbrella of ABA, which is why we keep telling you we say no to it. So, to close out, Autism Speaks is not what they try to seem. They're not here to help you and your families. They are here to make money off fear, off desperation. And they are willing to do anything to get your money, including dehumanizing autistic children, even inspiring others to fear our very existence, essentially comparing us to predators or empty husks, and promote groups like this who have long histories of torture and murder. So, they are simply one of the many groups that are complicit, partnering, and are a part of the controversy with the JRC. All right, folks, that's all I got for now. There is going to be another video coming out in regards to the tug situation, which will be coming out in a few minutes. After this video, I do feel like I need to take a little bit of a breather. Now, as always, folks, we don't get many views on this channel, especially not for my autism or JRC videos. Guys, this is more important than any of the other videos I do. These children are in danger now. They need help now. They are still in their abusive, torturous situation. They are living in fear right now. This isn't a game. This isn't a scandal. We're fighting for people's lives. So please share this video. Share all the others. You can find them all under the video tab in my channel, since my home screen continues to be wiped clean. Share it out on all your social media platforms. We gotta Stop the Shocks trending. We gotta fight for these kids. We have to. We have to get it everywhere because the mainstream media is damn sure not gonna help. We're not like AH where the ACLU is gonna back us up. It's all on us, and we need all the help we can get. Now, in the description, I'm also going to be including the link to the shutdown the Judge Rotenberg Center change.org petition. Please sign that. Share it everywhere, along with these videos, along with the other videos to survivors that you find on YouTube. Share everything, not just from my channel. Share from all the people who are putting out videos on this topic. It's more important than you know. I do appreciate your time this afternoon. I do hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.